When I saw that, that was like the moment when the record goes and skips and you're like, what? So you believe the story of Frank Dukes, right?
I'm just saying that I'm keeping an open mind.
Every day, I practice martial arts.
Yo, what is it I hear about your boy Viking Samurai claiming a prime Frank Dukes could beat a prime Michael Bisping?
Yeah, that's crazy, right? I just came across that video a couple days ago. So Viking Samurai, who's a YouTuber here, does a lot of martial arts stuff, especially Van Damme, 80s action stuff, really cool stuff, made a series of interviews with Frank Dukes. And then later, after Michael Bisping did a video, I think it was like 5 fake martial art masters or something exposed, Michael Bisping, spoiler alert, had Frank Dukes at number 1, all right? Of like all-time fake, phony martial art guys, right? And, you know, of course, did what most people do when they talk about Frank Dukes is call his quote-unquote record into question, right? So, most people know Frank Dukes, especially like if you're kind of old dirty bastards like us, because he was the guy that supposedly the movie Bloodsport was based on, right? And I think that's one of the few things that kind of takes away from that movie. Had you not had the whole based on a true story thing, you would just be like, yo, Bloodsport, what a classic movie, right? And I think it's only slightly tainted by the fact that they pretended it was based on a story that's complete bullshit.
Well, pretended. I mean, you know, it's not bullshit, right?
So you believe the story of Frank Dukes, right?
I'm just saying that I'm keeping an open mind.
Okay, all right. I find that strange. Given your accent, you should be on Michael Bisping's side.
Don't get me wrong. I love Michael Bisping. I think he's great. Always have done. But, you know, the Dukes factor's a bit of a thing.
Yeah, I think the only reason why people give Frank Dukes any potential benefit of the doubt is because of the movie Bloodsport, right?
Yeah.
But there are a lot of problems with Frank Dukes' story, right? Besides the fact that a lot of his claims of military records they've gone out and shown that actually he's lied about those things. There are photos of him with military uniform on where he's got medals from different branches of the military on there. And you can find his discharge records from, I guess it was the Marines. And, you know, he didn't see any active combat. He said he was in Vietnam. When he actually joined the Marines, I think, after the Vietnam War was over.
Well, you know what his response to all of that is that the government's trying to smear his name because he was like Secret Service.
Yeah, of course. That's what they want you to think,
yes,
right?
Absolutely.
Yes, right.
And I believe him.
So anyway, I guess after Michael Bisping had this video where he said, you know, Frank Dukes is basically the number 1 fraud. I mean, I think Frank Dukes said something like he had 300 plus fights is his like total record, right?
Yeah.
And, you know, and it was something like, I don't know, 7 draws and 1 loss. It's like he's got to put the 1 loss in there just to make it seem somewhat believable, all right? It's like, well, I've had, you know, out of 320 something fights, I did have 1 loss. You know, you're like, come on, dude.
Yeah, I think if you look through his record in the Kumite, it worked out that he had like something ridiculous, like a knockout every 57 minutes or some craziness like that.
Well, supposedly it was like 50-something knockouts, I think, in like a single tournament, which is mathematically impossible. Mm-hmm. The number of people who would have had to participate in an elimination tournament where one person could have so many knockouts is apparently like way more people than there are on Earth. There was a video on YouTube a long time ago debunking the claims, and they did the math on it. They were like, how many billions of people would have had to have been at that tournament or something like that. But anyway, so I guess in response, Viking Samurai, who's got a big channel here on YouTube for martial arts stuff, says that he believes that a prime Frank Dukes would beat, I suppose, a prime Michael Bisping.
Wow.
Don't get me wrong. I love me a Viking Samurai, all right? Love his content. But when I saw that was like the moment when the record goes and skips and you're like, what? Like, because I don't think a prime Frank Dukes would beat the worst version of Michael Bisping with 1 arm tied behind his back. And the reason is because, first of all, as I've said before, when it comes to Frank Dukes' claims, all right, it's not up to YouTubers to disprove them, all right? Because the burden of proof is not on the person disputing the claim. The burden of proof is on the person who makes the claim. Frank Dukes has made multiple claims about, for one, fighting in a secret tournament called the Kumite, which, you know, was like very exclusive. Only the best fighters got to go, and it was held in, I suppose, different locations every number of years. And, you know, only like the best of the best got invites. The problem is the best of the best from his era, let's just say people like Benny the Jet Urquidez or Don the Dragon Wilson, apparently their invitation got lost in the mail to go to the Kumite. But Frank Dukes, whom, as far as I know, didn't have any real record in martial arts outside of his Kumite record. So then the question is, well, if they're inviting all these top flight fighters, you would assume they would invite people who are champions or had good records, and then they would be invited to fight in the secret Kumite thing. But Frank Dukes doesn't have that. But the other guys who do have that, they apparently did not get an invite to the Kumite.
Well, alternative point of view, maybe they weren't the top of the tree and there was a whole other level of people above, which is what Frank Dukes was part of.
I see. He's like part of a secret cabal of like people, really elite fighters, right?
Yeah, absolutely. 100%. That's a thing.
It's possible, all right? But here's the problem, okay? Let's give Frank Dukes all of his let's give him all of his claims, all right? He's a guy who learned ninjutsu from Senzo Tanaka, although they could never find any records of a Senzo Tanaka living in California, and that also happens to be the name of, I think, a Bond villain or something like that, right? So clearly Frank Dukes has some kind of James Bond fantasies that he's kind of trying to project onto himself. Well, we don't have any real records of him fighting outside of that. We don't really have any real footage of Frank Dukes besides doing either controlled demonstrations or breaking shit. All right, so like, breaking bricks or throwing stuff through, bulletproof glass or whatever the hell it is that he does. And none of these things amount to fighting prowess, right? There's a lot of guys out there who can do all sorts of amazing demonstrations. And it's not to say that stuff's easy or fake or whatever, but the fact that you can smash however many blocks of ice or whatever, it doesn't necessarily transfer to the fact that you can stop someone like Michael Bisping from murdering your face with his fists, okay? All right? And so I think that, again, unfortunately, because of the movie Bloodsport, I think Frank Dukes gets a lot of leeway where people kind of half give him a little bit of credit and credibility in terms of his martial prowess, when it's actually just based on the fact that you were young when you saw this movie, so you kind of want to believe. For example, like people who grew up watching Bruce Lee movies want to believe that Bruce Lee was that same guy in real life, although the difference between Bruce Lee and Frank Dukes is Bruce Lee would be the person who would tell you, no, I'm not that person. That's just a movie. Real fighting and real life martial arts is nothing at all like what I do there. Frank Dukes is like, hold my beer. I'm way better than that guy was who portrayed me in the movies, right? And so a lot of people are like, fine, I'll give him the benefit of the doubt. But the truth is there's no proof or evidence to back up any of Frank Dukes' claims. So to think that Michael Bisping, someone who was the middleweight UFC champion, all right, had a very close fight but still won against Anderson Silva, beat Luke Rockhold for the belt in their rematch, beat Dan Henderson, who had previously, beaten him a long time ago, but came back and beat him. But also what people forget is Kung Lee, who was one of the best strikers in mixed martial arts at that time. I think he was a Strikeforce champion, went over to UFC when UFC bought Strikeforce, and he had a fight with Michael Bisping. Yeah. Michael Bisping beat the brakes off of Kung Lee. Wow. All right, beat the brakes off. And someone like Kung Lee was an elite top of the food chain striker. To think that Frank Dukes was even half of what Kung Lee was, all right, I think would be to give him a lot of credit. Based on that fight alone, there is no way that the best version of Frank Dukes could beat the worst version of Michael Bisping. Not a chance. Not a chance. Even now, Michael Bisping had some double knee surgery. He's missing an eye. He's been retired for, I think, 4 years now. I think if you gave him a 1 week training camp and you could go back in time and get the best version of Frank Dukes with Michael Bisping now with a 1 week training camp, I think Michael Bisping now would beat the living shit out of that Frank Dukes.
Well, I guess we'll never know.
Well, that's all I got to say about that.